Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Mark from Solo Games, and today I'm back from the WoCal Regionals, which is also known as the SoCal Regionals. And overall, I did pretty well, right? So I got second place in the event, which was far exceed my expectations. I personally was trying to go to this event and just kind of get a little bit of experience of what playing 7 rounds in day one feels like, how grueling it will be, what kind of tips I have for like eating and other things like that, just kind of prepping, right? And then playing more professionally where it's very strict tournament rules, meaning like being nice could cost me the game, so kind of don't be nice. I still made that mistake, by the way. There are a lot of moves where I let my opponent go, and then I would literally ask the judge, like, "Hey, do I have to do that?" And they're like, "Nope, it's your discretion." Which I probably should have said, "No, I'm not. You already passed the turn. You can't then declare tax afterwards, right?" That's pretty much the way that you probably should play the game, especially yeah. And that just tells people like if you're playing tournament, be slow. It's okay to play a little slower. Be sure of what you're doing and then execute. So do that, right? Um, I do wanted to basically cover the final match, final game a little bit with everybody, so everyone can kind of think about like or see things from my perspective, right? Final match. By the way, the final match was really close, right? We got one game each, myself and Ver. In fact, my deck was basically suboptimal. I ran Varix, right? The fire prevention or prevent damage fire domain in my main deck. I ran 3 of them. It's probably just not a good card. In fact, that was one card I was sideboarding out the whole weekend. Every single game one into game two, I would sideboard that card out for almost anything else. So yeah, definitely not a good card in my deck. So as you can see, even if the deck is not optimal, if you play the decks, I don't know, efficiently, you could actually still be okay, right? So it's just how it works. Anyway, so game one I lose, game two I win. Game three was really interesting. My draw was not the best, but I was kind of still getting good floating memory in the yard, which allowed me to go level up quickly. Ver is playing a very aggressive Fire Lorraine deck, which basically ideas he wants to kill on turn two very quickly. Ally rush me plus a devastating rending blow, or like some sort of fiery momentum type of like dealing like 10, 12, 14 damage in one swing, right? And so I knew my strategy was this, right? Early game survive, late game I could win once I draw Insol. Essentially, that's the idea here. So of course, he's pushing me pretty hard in game three. I am on my back foot. I go to level 3, but basically I don't have much left. I was able to Avarice, Ascension loop for a little bit. I did draw Insol, but I didn't have enough cards in hand to actually play Insol. Had I had one extra card, it would totally work. But I was one card short of being able to play Insol. So even though drawing Insol didn't matter, I had to throw it down for a different card. So at the end of this kind of decision tree here, I had to make 9 damage, and there was no way I can make that damage unless I had devastating blow, which I did not. And the reason I did not have it was because I actually sideboarded 2 of them out, so leaving only 1 in my deck to sideboard in Sparkle Lights. And the idea behind the Sparkle Lights was that if there are situations where he pumps his allies, right, like an Honorable Vanguard or something with 2 health, a lot through Inspired Calls, Arthur's Banner Knights, etc., then I would be able to Sparkle Light one of them and prevent quite a bit of damage, right? Early game, protect myself. Whereas having devastating blow is just a 3 cost for 3 damage unless I get to level 4 or level 3, which may not even happen, right? If I can't survive the early game. So that's kind of like my mentality of why I sideboarded them out. Unfortunately, that means when I was digging for a devastating blow, it's very unlikely I would actually be able to get it. So there's that. Now onto the actual game itself, right? So in that moment, I had 4 cards in my hand. I believe it was like some random cards that didn't matter, like Honorable Vanguard or something like that, and a Savage Slash and a Deflecting Steel. Now I did want to have 2 Deflecting Steel. I feel like if I have 2 in my hand, I would have immediately passed turn, which would be a safety like precaution to be able to hold 2 defensive options, give me effectively 6 more health against his deck. And that would be very, very good for that situation of the game. But I unfortunately didn't have it. I went for the kind of like I think probably the mistake was to attack his health directly and then kill the conscript. Now, with his conscript and vanguard on board, I could not leave the conscript up. That card is already a 3 attack with any amount of buffs, becomes 4 or 5. And I think the difference for me was about 7 damage. Once he can make 7 damage, I would be dead. So in that situation, I attacked his conscript with Savage Slash, and then of course I swung at face with Pendragon for 3. In retrospect, I probably should have attacked his conscript with my Pendragon, killing it, and then holding 4 cards past the turn, because at least that would signal as a bluff, right? It's a bluff on my side, but Ver might think that I have 2 deflecting, and no matter what he would do, he would have to make extra damage, which would again make him potentially think and rethink whether he would try to kill me that turn or hold on to his own defensive options to push for the next turn. Now, I think a lot of times when I think about these games with Grand Archive, the game is so close that I think in almost all cases you should always go for the win, hoping your opponent doesn't have kind of like some sort of defensive option to prevent you from winning. And the reason for that is because let's say you don't do that and you pass the turn, the next turn might be your end. So that's a little bit tricky. This is where Grand Archive, because the game is so close, normally if you can win, you don't want to just pass the turn. You do want to take the risk to potentially win, because if you pass the turn, you might lose anyways. So there's that. And that's pretty much it. The draws didn't quite go my way. Had I had 1 extra deflecting steal or drew a devastating slash or blow, I would be able to probably lock in game 3 and be rank 1. So there's that. Anyways, this is how the game flows. I'm not overall disappointed with my play. I felt like I did pretty reasonably and made best do with my cards. Could I have played it a little bit better? Absolutely. But even then, in that case, I think Ver would have still swung at me and took the win. Cool. But that's the final match. So let's talk a little bit about the overall process of getting to the final table. First of all, I want to thank everybody who played me and being so patient with me day 1 and day 2. We had a lot of good banter. I am probably a lot more silent when I play with you for this tournament than when I play normally at the store. Part of this reason is because I was taking the matches a lot more seriously than I have ever taken any card game matches I played. And part of this because I really want to do well. I felt like, if I make a big trip out to Southern California, I wanted to not take it, I want to respect the game, respect my opponents, and respect the fact that I took time away from my family to go do something. So I wanted to do really well. And that's why maybe I was a little more silent. Sorry about that. I'm usually a very vocal person. And of course, by the end of the day, the time where I would be able to hang out with you, unfortunately, I was so tired. I just could not have the energy to go do that again, especially since I made day 2. I had to go like right away to go to bed because I had to wake up and play day 2. So there's that. But otherwise, day 1, I started off really well. I went 4-0. In fact, I was, I think Hermetic told me later that I was one of the best 4-0s because I didn't drop a single game. So I had 8 games where it's all 2-0s, right? And so my 4 matches were all victories, and I did not drop a single game. Of course, game 5, I didn't do so hot, so I lost that match. And then game 6, I dropped that match as well against a player that I usually drop matches against. So I think there was a lot of just fear playing into it as well. Like going into that match, playing against Brooks, I always feel a little bit more like, hey, Brooks has the cards. Brooks is such a powerful player. There are these players where they sit down and, it's like when in poker, right? They talk about Chris Jesus Ferguson or Phil Hellmuth, whatever, when they're holding 2 cards, you always feel like they have pocket rockets. It feels that way with Brooks, right? And I know there are times when he also bricks on his draws, but it doesn't feel that way when I play him. Anywho, I did take a game off Brooks, but eventually he did win 2-0. So now I'm sitting at 4-2 and basically potentially not even making day 2, which would be very disappointing, especially because I did so well early on in the day. Of course, we go to game 7. It's a very close match. Was able to win that one towards the end. So there's that. Of course, I think, basically we're so tired. In that match, actually, I think game 1, I shouldn't even have lost. I insoled. My opponent Veiling breezed for 5. And like an idiot, I swung at his face and not at his creatures. My opponent was playing a ally rush Wind Lorraine, so it would have made much better sense to clear his board than actually swing at his face. And I had another Insole in hand, so the worst case scenario was I was just going to play Insole again next turn, as long as I survived. The problem is I didn't survive, so it didn't matter, right? So anyways, I was able to edge out that match, which pushed me out to day 2. So day 2, of course, we go through the brackets and all that stuff, pushing up. My toughest matchup definitely was the Water Lorraine and the Fire Rye. So the Fire Rye was just super fast. I mean, there were games where, you could tell me that Fire Lorraine is does really well against Fire Rye or all this stuff. But to be honest, I didn't feel that way. I felt like I was behind because he was so fast. Playing against Water Lorraine, had I not had a bunch of matches with Foam and Eva, basically working through, how it plays out to play fire against water, I would not know the cards of what water can do and how they can stop me. And of course, it did also take my opponent bricking, and I think he played maybe a little too fast because there were definitely moments where he says, "Oh, I feel like I had you, I misplayed," etc. So there's of course moments like that. So I always feel bad, but at the same time, it is competition. So making mistakes is definitely part of it, even at the highest level of other competitions like chess. A lot of the people who win are just winning off of the backs of the mistakes that your opponent has made. So there's cases like that anyway. So of course, it is what it is. So let's talk about some of the fun stuff, right? So I remember at Final Table, I was bantering a lot. I mean, throughout the whole weekend too, pretty much every opponent I was playing against was very impressed by my playmat. I was shilling Heavy Play the whole time. Now, I'm not sponsored by Heavy Play. In fact, honestly, since the system is so good, I would like to be sponsored. So, hey, if you're out there, hit me up. Well, let's talk about some promo codes for my viewers, etc. Let's get Heavy Played in hand of people. But yeah, everybody who saw the playmats and the deck boxes, the magnet systems really liked it. They were very impressed by it. So there's just really, really cool things like that, right? Many of the people are so friendly. I met so many good people and so funny. The conversation is just so good. We would sit down and talk about where people are from. I don't know. I can't specifically tell you what happened, right? But South Nashville, you know who I'm talking about, right? South Virginia, South Nashville, my buddies. Yeah, so there's that. The jokes, the trolling, super amazing throughout the whole weekend. Meeting Sildar was really cool too. I think I've met Sildar on voice chat many, many times. He would always kind of just say, "Hey, this is Mark from Solar Games," whatever. But it's always just kind of interesting to me to put a face to a name, right? In my head, I had an mental image of what Sildar looks like. He didn't look like what I thought he would look like. So it's kind of cool just to see the real person behind the game, right? Some key reflections about the weekend. I think I had a really good time. Not disappointed at all that I went to SoCal Regionals. In fact, me going to the SoCal Regionals was almost like a fairy tale story. I didn't plan on going. In fact, my friends had a whitewater rafting trip, right, for his birthday that I really wanted to be part of. So I decided to go to that instead of SoCal Regionals. Of course, I find out later that trip was actually planned for the 19th, not on the 12th. So a different weekend, right? And so it totally worked out that I can go to SoCal Regionals. So that was really great. So I clutched it. And of course, I didn't really buy the tickets yet, but I also won the tickets at VPC's store championship because Shinja, I think, generously donated a ticket to our store championship. So I got the ticket. I mean, it was just me and Peter who were looking to go. By the way, Peter did super well too from VPC. He was in top 4. I think he was knocked out by Ver as well. So Ver is the unofficial slayer of VPC champions. Just saying, Ver did a great job. Anyways, so I won the ticket. I shared the ticket with Peter because he was the only other person who wanted to go anyway. So we went 50-50 on the free ticket essentially. So it was really cool. So we all kind of went half price to the regionals, which is just really fun. Other things I did, I watched Reed Duke's series on how to professionally play Magic. I actually thought really was well done. Maybe for me as somebody who's never heard these things, it was very helpful. For other players who maybe are familiar with this stuff, it's not as useful. But for me, that's really helpful. So go check that out. I think if you have a TCG Player Infinite subscription, that's free, but it's on the channel Fireball, like, it's called the Edge or something. So check that out. Water Lorraine. Water Lorraine is such a big brain play, right? So kind of going into the weekend, I was thinking, look, Water Lorraine is really good against Wind and Fire Lorraine. And what's top of meta right now? Wind and Fire Lorraine, right? So it's a deck that's essentially pretty bad against Fire Rye or any Rye variations, but it's pretty good against Wind and Fire Lorraine. So it's like if you think about the circle that is Wind to Fire Rye, Wind Lorraine to Fire Rye, back to Wind Lorraine, kind of this circle. I would say there's like another edge to this that is Water Lorraine, which beats pretty consistently both Fire and Wind Lorraine. As long as Water doesn't brick, right, and has enough draws kind of going into the late game, they're going to be fine. But I love the tech. I love the people who thought that far and brought Water Lorraine to the regionals. There were more than, I think, 3 Water Lorraines. I know there were 3. I played against 2 of them, who basically one of them, no, there's definitely 3 because I played against one of them in the lower brackets in the day 1. And I know there were 2 Water Lorraines in the top 16 going to day 2. And I did play one of them. And honestly, I beat him probably only because I got lucky, not because my deck is just better. It was, I had all the preparations, right? Because Foamy and Eva helped me prep. But of course, any amount of prepping doesn't help when the champion stopping package that is offered by Water Lorraine is insanely good. So there's that. Anyways, big props to Water Lorraine players. Ayn and Michael, you guys are the ones I played against. I definitely think you guys did really well. Good work, and really good looking Water deck. By the way, for those, every time I think about Water Lorraine, I think about the sword fighting scene in Hero on the lake. So if you know what I'm talking about, right? On the lake, there's Jet Li's character fighting against Broken Sword, and then they were fighting on the river. That's Water Lorraine, okay? So a lot of like that kind of like in Chinese martial art. It's pretty cool, right? All right, so some tips I felt like were really helpful and I wanted to share with everybody else who might even consider doing any big events like this. Number 1, never give up. So I definitely had the mentality that even if I was playing game 1, game 2, whatever, and I lose, I would not give up. I was determined to play all 7 rounds day 1 because I paid for it. I want to get the experience. I want to go learn what other decks are playing, how other players are playing. It was just valuable experience. And then number 2 is, don't push yourself to be the top. Don't give yourself like these lofty goals like, hey, I'm going to be rank 1. I feel like that's not a goal that's very achievable. Rather, make goals that are very achievable goals for yourself. For example, one of the goals for me going into this entire weekend was if I play Insol, I will make sure I never miss a single sword trigger, right? Drawn Blade is the easy one. Everyone gets that. But a lot of times I forget my ornamental greatsword trigger to add +1 to ally. So of course you have to play your Insol correctly. If you're playing Banner Knight, you want to lay down the Banner Knight first, then you want to Insol because then the ornamental greatsword can actually buff Banner Knight, and if you play it the other way around, it wouldn't work, right? So things like that. I basically made very small goals for myself, and I made sure that I didn't make those kind of mistakes going into this event, and it worked out really well because it made my gameplay overall better, and every single time I would do certain things, it was just the perfect play, and if I play perfectly and consistently, then I would be able to win consistently more as well. Luck is huge. So just be aware that even if you play perfectly, even if your deck is just favored, there are cases when you don't get the lucky draws. And even if you're favored, you could still lose. Exercise. So this one is probably going to be a little different for a lot of players. I actually made sure on day 2 in the morning, I did a 30-minute run, right? And part of that is because to me personally, I think that's really important to be able to do the runs and then really kind of get your brain going. I think exercising before events is actually super helpful. It makes me super clear, right? There were definitely moments of brain fog that I would power through, and the exercise helps me kind of work through that piece, right? And then the other part of working through those brain fog is the snacks and the water. The hydration is super important during events. You will play and not realize you're not drinking water. So I think it was your medic who told me, put a water bottle next to you and just take sips of it, or maybe Caleb, I forgot who told me this, but take sips from it, whenever your opponent's playing. That's usually a good idea. Snacks is also really good. I remember there was one game on, I think it was game 7 on day 1. And we're playing almost towards midnight at this point. I was so tired and I had heavy brain fog, but I kind of took out an energy bar I had in my backpack. I chewed on it really slowly, but really chewing on it. And within about 3 to 4 minutes, I think that sugar hit my brain and it just cleared everything up. Doing the Lorraine math was much easier at that point, so it definitely helps. So look, food buff is pretty rare, okay? Because sometimes you don't have time for lunch and those things. You have to run around the hotel to find out who has lunch and how soon they can make it. So you got to get what you can take all the time. So if your friends can bring you food, if you have snack bars, definitely those are things you should lean upon. Okay. The games themselves, I think overall, just kind of think about this. I really like competition. The more I play events like this, I feel like the reasons I don't like, Magic, Commander, and those kind of casual formats is the reason why I do like competition like this. I like one-on-one because I feel like my victory and my loss is my own problem or my own success. So I never have to feel like I'm being carried by someone else. And maybe this is just my personal personality. I don't like playing 2v2 because I don't like the feeling that my victory depends on other people, right? Whether I lose or win depends on other people. It just feels a little bit off to me. I like this a lot better because I can control my own destiny. So there's just a little bit more, I guess, about myself, right? And then again, pushing myself super hard this weekend definitely helped because it showed me that I can play optimal if I put my mind to it and really, really push myself. So yeah. Now this part is the one I kind of hate the most, but it's about the regrets orb of regrets that I had for this weekend. I think part of it was regret of not having enough time to do content creation. Shinja was there. I really wanted to do a kind of a talk with Shinja. In fact, I almost thought I was just going to lose day 1, right? And then day 2, I'll have a lot of time in between games to go and actually do content creation, do a couple interviews, and kind of just chat with players. But I really didn't have enough time to do any of that stuff. And between games, when I did have time, I was more focused on prepping for my next match. I didn't want to distract myself with content creation, even though it's something I really, really like doing. I didn't play the FTC pre-release, right? So at the same time, I did have the packs. I was able to open the ones I paid for. Unfortunately, I didn't have any time to go play the actual pre-release, which kind of sucks. But I did try to build a deck when I got home. So I guess there's that. Yeah. Not going to Joe's Ice. One of my friends recommended Joe's Ice in Anaheim. Very, very good ice cream, I guess. I didn't actually get a chance to go because it was just too late. And day 2, when I finished the tournament, I just want to go home. It's honestly what it is, right? And then I guess the other regret is for some reason Roger didn't give me any foils in my FTC packs. So I opened 8 packs and I didn't get a single foil. We're definitely below rates, so I'm gonna complain to the QC department about print runs and all that stuff. So there's that. Yeah. Special thanks. So this part, special thanks, of course, first of all to Shinja, Ken, the TM32 double team, whatever, and then also Top Cards for putting the event together, kind of sponsoring it, all that stuff. Really, really great. Thank you guys so much for actually making the event happen. I know event organization is super hectic, and we ran into some issues on day 1, but it's of course you had contingency plans, and your contingency plans could not account for something else being broken. So hey, you know what? I think you guys powered through it. I think you guys are really fast. Great job organizing everything and keeping it all afloat, right? Other thanks to my NorCal crew. Thank you guys so much for believing in me. I know day 2, especially the final match, we had a lot of people from NorCal just watching that live, and I know you guys were cheering me on. And while I cannot hear it or see it, knowing that you guys were there cheering me on, kind of rooting for me, really did help me power through my match. So I appreciate it, and thank you so much. Special thanks for Sean and Eva, the crew behind Solar Productions. for helping me practice and work on my game, actually a couple days before the SoCal Regionals. So thank you so much for taking time and helping me prepare for this whole weekend. I felt like I played much better because of those practice games. And of course, all the great people I met at the event, every opponent I played along the way for being patient with me. I know I'm a probably slower player than what you're used to. So I appreciate you being patient. I appreciate no one kind of like, doing clocks on me or anything like that. So I really, really, really appreciate it. And luckily, none of my games had to go to time except one. So overall, like it wasn't, too bad, I guess. So I did play Fire Lane for this reason. So there's a lot less thinking necessary. Special thanks to the patrons and the YouTube subscribers for supporting me and cheering me on and before and during my matches. So thank you so much. And of course, lastly but not least, thank you to the GA team, Seldar, Roger, everybody else, all the devs, Alan, Christian, these kind of people. Thank you so much for building an amazing game and continually pushing for events like this and making these events possible for the community, making it so that we have, like for a game that's only 4 months old, we have store championships, worldwide. We have regionals worldwide. This is an accomplishment. I don't think there's another game I can say the same for this type of tournament support. Even Flesh and Blood out of the gate didn't have this kind of massive tournament support in the beginning. It was a little bit more isolated to New Zealand and Australia, that area, and definitely came to North America like later. So I really appreciate all these things that we did. And of course, we can't end the video without showing you the prize of winning. So here you go. This is the Orb of Regret that I've won for my national qualifier. Originally, some of my closer friends know this, but originally my plan was to play Grand Archive professionally, or push myself to compete professionally. But given that I have a family and other commitments like this YouTube channel, other things I do, it really wasn't something that's feasible for me to do long term. Again, I'm also kind of older. I know it doesn't look at my Asian, Asians don't crack, right? But I'm not the same young people that I met over this weekend. So long term, it's not really what's in it for me. My original goal was to push myself until Ascent, but after Ascent, I would quit. Now, given that I did perform pretty well and I did get a national invite, I think it would be remiss for me to not go to nationals, right? So I will be going to nationals. In fact, I may even go to Ascent in New Zealand because I kind of want to check out the Hobbit homes while I'm there and just kind of hike. I feel like New Zealand is a great place for people who love nature and hiking. So I kind of want to go to Ascent in New Zealand as well. But after nationals, I don't know if there's going to be worlds, but if let's say I do really well, go to worlds, that's it. After that, I will be quitting competitive Grand Archive. But don't fear not, I will be definitely scamming all of you guys on the marketplace, supporting the game in different ways, supporting the game through content, and of course, casually playing this game, but just not professionally or competitively like the way I've been doing it just now. Anyways, longer video today. Thank you so much for watching it. And this is my perspective and retrospective on the entire weekend. All right, Mark from Solo Games, I'm out. Stay classy. I'll see you next time.